wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new and special episode of your program Out of the Box. The reason that this episode is a very special one because it's the end of season one. During this season, we talked about the world philosophers since the time of antiquity. So we started with Plato and Aristotle, passing through all the different periods in world history. And until last episode, we talked about a great philosopher that is the philosopher of nihilism and the very controversial Friedrich Nietzsche. Now, who will be our honorary guest of the last episode in season one? Maybe you can see the picture behind me, but why did we choose Jean-Paul Sartre? So actually, today we'll be talking about Jean-Paul Sartre, and we'll be discussing briefly again his compatriot and his friend, also Albert Camus. So they're very much interconnected. Jean-Paul Sartre was a man who wore many hats, actually. He was a political activist. He was a Marxist, a very outstanding Marxist, if you'd like to say. And of course, he was a philosopher. And he was one of the founders of the school of existentialism. And his fellow and compatriot, Albert Camus, was the founder of the school of absurdism. So what do these schools tell us? And how can we use his ideas today? Will it help us understand the world we're living in right now better? To delve more deeper into the crypts of Sartre and Camus, I'm really delighted to be accompanied today by the free thinker and writer, Ahmad Barsoum. Ahmad, hello and welcome to the program.
Hello, Mohammed. And first, I would like to congratulate you on the end of this successful season, where you provided us with lots of insight and deep knowledge about the different schools of philosophy. And really, all of us, we have benefited from the discussion that we had through the entire last 2 years. But of course, it's a pleasure to be always with you. And thank you for your distinguished viewers.
Absolutely. The gratitude is definitely mutual because you are part and parcel of the success of this program. And of course, first and foremost, our dear distinguished viewers. So I'm at to start off Sartre was born at the beginning of the 20th century. So, which was a very hard time to live in, actually, because when he was just a little child, World War I erupted. And then World War I was called the war to end all wars. But actually, the League of Nations proved to be a big failure. The Treaty of Versailles completely actually was the major catalyst for World War II. And World War II left 80 million casualties, not to talk about injuries or all the other political and social destruction and civil strife that it left. And he was, when World War II erupted, he was in his 30s. So do you think if he was born in a more peaceful time, he would have thought in a different way? Do you think the time where he was born and these two very destructive world wars were a major catalyst and they were like a muse for his ideas, if you like?
Well, definitely. Sartre was affected and has been not the victim, I would say, the result of conflict of political and social struggles all over the world. But let's start from the beginning, because he was born at the beginning of the 20th century. His birth also witnessed the birth of different movements in politics, in art, like the Bohemian movement in art, and the rise of the communism in Soviet Union, and also the World War I, as you mentioned. So and so many theories, also Freudian theories about human psychology, and all these together contributed to shape what we have seen later, the future of Sartre. being a very intellectual person, I would call him also a witness of history, of modern history, because he have witnessed the World War One. Before that, he was educated during this age of the modernization. He has also witnessed the rise of capitalism after the World War II and how the American model of capitalism has prevailed among the world, the Western world. And absolutely, he is the philosopher of all seasons now, because he learned from all of before and now he has concluded with the modern world.
Absolutely. And just like you pointed here, like during World War One, Russia entered World War One as the Tsarist Russia. But actually, in the middle of the war, the Soviets, the Bolsheviks, like they led the revolution, and actually Russia, in reality, withdrew from its alliance in World War One because it was very busy with internal struggles. And of course, there was the great discussions happening, about Marxism versus like the actual implementation of the Soviets. So a lot of people argued that this was not really what Karl Marx said, and there was like Lenin, Trotsky, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, of course, there was capitalism, and he was a great advocate of Marxism, and to be very specific, Marxism. I wouldn't say very much communism.
Yes, I agree.
He was totally against capitalism. Do you think, again, like, because he was a French man, at the end of the day, and France was a country that suffered a lot during both world wars. It was invaded in record time during World War II, where Hitler called, France his living room. Yeah. And the Maginot Line, which was the pride of the French military, fell in no time. So do you think all these things compiled led to him being so much pro-Marxism and against capitalism?
Okay, I can see Sartre as a very strong believer in Marxism because of his nature. Marxism as a theory, as we have maybe discussed it before together, it is a very beautiful theory. And it aims to the well-being of all mankind, equality, prosperity, and even luxury. So most people don't know that the Marxism is calling for the luxury of all mankind. So we can work less hours and spend the rest of the day and night in enjoying nature and technology and science and art. So a person like Sartre, who was a thinker, philosopher, historian, biographer, all these intellectual products in him, definitely he would be the first supporter and believer in Marxism. Yet, of course, as you also mentioned, that Marxism does not mean communism, because there are two different concepts completely. Communism is just the application of a theory in a very aggressive and irrelevant way to humanity. However, Sartre being so idealist, Marxism is an ideal theory, so definitely they will meet together and he will be the advocate for Marxism in the modern times.
Okay, so before we delve deeper, let's talk with our dear viewers and watch this short report about the most important ideas of Sartre. Again, the most important. We can never cram the ideas of any philosopher, alone Sartre's in just one short report. We'll watch the report and we'll resume our discussion. Jean-Paul Sartre was a French playwright, novelist, screenwriter, political activist, biographer, and literary critic, as well as a leading figure in the 20th century French philosophy and Marxism. Sartre believed that the human beings live in perpetual anguish, not only because life is miserable, but because we are condemned to be free.
While the circumstances of our birth and upbringing are beyond our control, he says that once we become self-aware, we have to make choices. Choices that define our very essence. Sartre's existential theory states that existence precedes essence. In other words, it is only by existing and behaving in a certain way that we give meaning to our lives. According to him, there is no fixed design of how man should exist, and there is no God who gives us a purpose. Therefore, the burden of defining ourselves, and therefore humanity, lies only on us. This lack of predetermined purpose, combined with an absurd existence that presents us with infinite choices, is described by Sartre as the anguish of freedom. With nothing to hold us back, we have the choice to take action to become who we want to be and live the life we want to live. The phenomenon of people accepting that things must be a certain way and thus refusing to acknowledge or pursue alternative options, this was called by him as living in bad faith. According to Sartre, people who convince themselves that they should do a certain kind of work or live in a certain city live in bad faith. Sartre described money as the only factor limiting individual freedom. He said the need for money is the excuse people give themselves when they turn off the idea of exploring non-traditional and non-conventional life options. Capitalism was the political system he blamed for this phenomenon. He said that capitalism is a machine that locks people in a cycle of working jobs that they don't like so they can buy things they don't need. He argued that this necessity of material things did not exist in reality, but was a man-made construct that led people to deny their freedom and to regard living in other ways as reckless.
Dear viewers, after watching this short report about the most important ideas of Sartre, resume our discussion with Ahmad. So Ahmad, the report again summed up some of the most important ideas of Sartre, but he starts by saying that humanity or humans live in perpetual anguish, continuously suffering because of the plethora of choices that they're hit with. Before we go into more details and explain what does he mean and so on, do you agree with this vision that humanity really lives in perpetual anguish, like all the time because of the great amount of choices in front of them?
This is a very debatable question because the answer depends on how I feel about Sartre's philosophy. And in that case, of course, I am a big fan and follower of Sartre's ideas. And also, I believe that they are good for all seasons, ideas for all seasons. So indeed, the anguish we are living in is perpetual. Since birth until the end of life, nothing is going to satisfy us, and we always struggle. There is struggle in all ways, whether struggle with existing in itself, struggle with fortune, struggle with family, struggle with jobs. And at the end of the day, we, as Sartre said, that we existed in anguish, but also we write and make our own destiny. So every act we make in life, or every step we take is drawing or driving our destiny. That means there is nothing pre-prepared or pre-arranged for us. There is no big plan, as most people think that it is created. Especially the religious people believe that everybody was born with a plan. This plan will lead him from birth to death. However, Sartre said, no, it is we were born without a reason. We just existed in nature, and then we start to create our own path as we go through it. So indeed, this is very, very strong anguish. And if we think it deeply as such, as a philosopher, yeah, it could make anyone miserable all his life. And by the way, we have so many philosophers and thinkers and writers, even in the Arab world and contemporary ones. All the writings, all their ideas, in whether they were books, poetry, or novels, were very affected or very influenced by Sartre. I can see, for instance, Salah Jahin as a very famous
of course.
poet and thinker as well, Egyptian. He was very sad all his life. He was full of anguish because filled with anguish because he couldn't find the purpose. He was trying to draw a beautiful picture of the world through his writings, but at the end, it revealed the truth about him.
In Egypt, like many countries in the Middle East, the ideas of Sartre are like spreading incredibly, like during the 60s and 70s, to be more specific. And the youth at that time, it was the trend, really.
Yes, it was.
Sartre ideas in the 60s and 70s, and
I was born in the 60s and the 70s. I was still in school, but I remember very well the discussion that my father had with his colleagues and friends, and the name Sartre was mentioned so many times. And by the time I started reading myself and looking into it, I started to pull out the books from my dad's library, which he had many books for Sartre, explanations and all his ideas as well and his writings.
Absolutely, because it was again a time of turmoil. It was a time of, like people felt like major shifts done at a very, very short time. Now, Sartre sees freedom as a double-edged sword. So on one hand, you are free. So there's you're not destined or you're not doomed to something. So you can choose. But the flip of that is that which path should I choose? Like I'm always at a crossroad, always, continuously. This or that, this or that. Again, do you see that freedom is a blessing, or is it some kind of agony or yoke that we carry?
That part I do support the first argument that freedom is a blessing, because no matter what we do with our freedom, our choice, we should bear the consequences of our choice. So we should not regret it. We should not look back and say why we didn't choose the other path. So it is not a double-edged tool as Sartre saw it. Maybe this is one of the things this is my opinion, of course. On the contrary, even Sartre himself, he said also, not choosing is a choice. The fact of not choosing is a choice in itself. So I do believe it's always it's neutral. I wouldn't say positive or negative, not a double-edged tool, but it's a neutral effects on us and is a blessing also as well.
So again, moving to the next point here, is that he says that he does not believe in a God. So he does not believe in a God that sort of orchestrates the whole universe and life and, decides destiny and so on. But he says, like, the circumstances of your birth, you have no control over them. So if you're born to a rich family, a poor family, a well-educated, uneducated, to a noble, to a lower class family, if you are born with some kind of, illness, or if you are impaired in any of your senses, again, there is nothing you can do about it. So you have no control about it. But so he always says that, existence always, precedes essence. So to create my own essence or my own value comes later. So existence, I exist, first of all, because how can I create any essence if I don't exist? And then existence is just basically very absurd. So it's like a roll of a dice. You roll the dice and you never know where it's going to land. So
Yes.
it can be a 1 or it can be a 6 in all aspects of life: health, wealth, social status, education, etc., etc. Of course, your nation, the color of your skin, your religion as well, because most people would inherit the religion of their family.
Yeah.
How do you see this vision?
Okay, this vision is very broad, and I believe that so many uh, studies were made about the existentialism as a theory. But I would say that Sartre came after the rise of the nihilism as also a very deep philosophy, which uh, called for nothingness, or we call that everything is does we have no value, life is nothing, and that's what led for Sartre to rise and say, no, there is life, there is existence, but it is uh, our choice to make it or not. And then Camus said that life exists, but it is absurd. So the three of them, the three theories, draw a long line of influence of Sartre on the philosophy. Together with Albert Camus, both of them, I think that they have proved to us through their writings, through their novels, that yes, life exists, and the existence we make is our own existence. And in the meantime, we have to make the choices to make it good for us. Again, the choices, according to Camus, has to be that the one we make in order to exist. So it is a combination of existentialism and absurdism together created this path of life that is totally in different direction than the ideology of a religion. So both together have a path that contradicts with the church in Europe, with the religions in the Middle East, with every religion or one of all the Abrahamic religion that they follow the God's bigger plan for humanity.
So he described people who just like to live a very classic, conventional life, just like their predecessors, and are not willing to explore any new adventures or any new fields. He described them as people living in bad faith. Do you think that he was right in saying that?
Well, he used the terminology or the sentence bad faith, where he never discussed faith in his previous theories, which is very interesting and contradicting, actually. But in that context, actually, he was right by choosing the bad faith because we stick to the traditions and the ideas that we have inherited from our ancestors. And we would like always to walk in our parents or sisters' steps. Because, and very simple, because this is something that we know. And mankind always like to follow the path that they know rather than choose a path that they have no idea about where it ends. But by the way, according to Sartre, again, when he came up with the bad faith concept, this actually has risen in the 50s and 60s. And that time also the world witnessed again another huge movement of freedom in music, in art, the hippies movements, the freedom of expression, freedom of, so it actually went together. And I believe those ideas of freedom is to use Sartre's expression, bad faith, or actually to defy it and make a good faith, not a bad faith anymore. So bad faith is a prison for us. Good faith is something that, I would say good faith, of course, because we are now rebelling against the traditions and the footsteps of our ancestors.
And he thinks that the perpetrator and, the devil's advocate really is capitalism. He always blames capitalism because he thinks that capitalism would always put us in this vicious circle or cycle, really, where we just work every day, we're just like wheels in a big machine, and we just keep doing the very classic jobs to get a paycheck, and then we actually at the end we find that we are doing things we don't like in order to get a paycheck to buy things we don't need. So he says that actually money and the life of capitalism are like shackles. They're like major bonds that hold us back. It's like a harness that really curbs our intents to explore anything new or any new field.
This is a different definition for Marxism. So when Sartre talked about capitalism in that way, that it is the chain that bound us to a big machine and geared us to it, and we are part of the machine, it is exactly what Karl Marx said, that we should not be slaves for the money and for on the jobs. We have to have the freedom of life, and we use the technology and minimum hours to enjoy life. So capitalism now, in order for the capitalists to build their wealth, they have some people or they need some people to work hard to make this money for them. And then they treat the workers or the employees within their corporations as the carrot and stick principle again. Capitalism, yes, it is built on the blood and sweat of workers, and thus it is always, I would say it is the devil that makes us work hard to make ends meet, and we live from hand to mouth. And that's why Sartre was absolutely right about it. We are gear in this huge machine.
And like you said here, we might be gears in this machine, and we might be crushed actually, because every gear is connected to, you have a small gear connected to a bigger one, and sort of it's just like one gear leads to another and so on.
And by the way, those gears also wear by time. So
absolutely,
we stay longer in this position, we will wear, and then they will just dismantle us and throw us away.
Absolutely.
And that's why someone loses their jobs in the capitalist system, they are done. Then all life their life is collapsed completely.
But again, World War I, World War II led to major changes in the in capitalism. Because of the inception of capitalism, it was really just this monstrous machine that crushes people and enslaves them. But people were forced, capitalist countries were forced, because of the major atrocities and great sufferings of their people during World War I and World War II, to introduce things like the welfare state. So again, things like the right to vote for women. And again, the right, because at the beginning, the right was given to, like white high-class men. So, but later on, it was open to everyone else and to women. And not only to vote, but they can nominate themselves. Something like, again, employment insurance was introduced. And healthcare and many things were introduced at that time. So do you think with modern capitalism, do you think it is still a problem with the introduction of welfare state? So today, actually, a lot of democracies today lean towards the uh, sort of like they're I wouldn't say leftist, but they're like sort of um, they're like leaning more towards socialism, not communism, of course, in any way, but more socialism. So, like again, bridging the gaps between different social classes. Do you think that his argument against capitalism is still valid today?
Indeed, always. No matter how many programs introduced to support the welfare of citizens, yet you see that the highest number of jobless and homeless people are those within the capitalist systems. And we I would see that the the social system, which is close to, I would say, in the middle between capitalism and communism, let's say, is so far the ideal one so far, although it does not cover everything. However, uh, it is it's very obvious. Capitalism cannot make everyone rich. Then who's going to work for the rich people? So they tend, or they, to keep this distance. Besides, as Sartre said again, they make and produce goods and services that we don't need, but they create the need for it. And then we stay connected, and we are now orbiting in their trajectory of needs. We have to work hard to get these needs, and then we have to work harder to get the new invention of the new cell phone, and then we have to subscribe in this new channel on the internet, and so on and so on and so on. And at the end of the day, they want us to work hard to give them the money back again by buying their products and services.
And again, yeah, please go ahead.
Again, I will go back again to Marxism, because although this was in the 19th century, however, Karl Marx said the ultimate goal of Marxism is that we enjoy time and work less hours, use this technology to give us more pleasure in life, not to work hard. That means also that those services and goods that we're acquiring now are overpriced for us to work harder to get them, and then the rich get richer and the poor gets poorer.
Exactly. Yeah, you have you buy a lot of goods and gadgets and whatnot, but you don't have enough time to enjoy them. That's one thing. Another thing, again, like the reason they bridge the gaps between social classes, or they give you some income, again, is just to keep the wheels turning, the gears turning. Because if we are poor, then they'll run out of consumers.
Yes.
So we need people to buy their products. So if everybody's bankrupt, nobody's buying their products. So they're not really doing it out of philanthropy at all.
Yes.
No, but it's again, self benefit. Now,
I was going to give you a small example about what happened in the 2008 and 9, when the three major car producers in the United States went bankrupt, or almost went bankrupt, and they were going to be out of business. What the government did is they bailed them out. And that's not because to keep the workers working. No, is to keep producing cars. So people have to buy cars. So they have to work hard. So the economic system will stay as it is. People have to borrow money from banks to pay for the cars, because car is an essential product in North America, and especially in the States, because of the vast areas. So the bailout was not to make the car manufacturers happy. It's to contribute to the whole economy, of course, to keep people buying cars. You cannot take them out of the equation.
Absolutely. And since we talked about Sartre, like it's inevitable to talk about Albert Camus as well, like his compatriot, his friend, and his co-thinker again. Now, Albert Camus, he is the founding father of absurdism. And so basically he sees that life is absurd and there's no plan at all. And he says, you're faced with three choices. Like there's no other. So the first one is to follow religion. But he says, if you follow religion, this means that you like you're bidding your brain and like your mental abilities and your cognitive capacities, you're bidding them farewell. means that you just, like you've deserted your mind, which is extremely absurd. Now, the other choice is that say, okay, life is all absurd, there's no meaning, and commit suicide, which he sees really as the pinnacle. It is the most absurd choice that you can take.
Indeed, yes.
The third choice is going again to existentialism, which is create your own path, create your own view. To what extent do you agree again with absurdism, and to what extent do you see that the way, like, to what extent it complements or supplements Jean-Paul Sartre's ideas?
All right. I'm a big fan of Camus, and maybe on our personal discussions, you and I have mentioned a lot that I am more affected by Camus.
True.
And by coincidence, actually, I had the chance and I had the pleasure of sitting in the same place in Algeria, on the Mediterranean, the cafe that Albert Camus used to sit there and write his essays and articles and books. And by looking at the nature at that spot in Algeria, on the north coast of Algeria, on the Mediterranean, well, he was right, because we make our own path, we make our own choices. Because I looked around me and the nature was so beautiful, and people are happy and enjoying life in that spot. People are very simple; they lead a very simple life. And yes, we have to choose our path to make happiness. But I will go back again to one important thing when he talked about follow a religion. When he talked about follow religion, he said something else. He said following religion is ideological suicide. Even he was against this choice, and that was the brilliant ideas he had. Because once we follow a religion, that means we have committed suicide to our brains, because we will be just followers. At that point, we will not have the ability to choose our path, because we will follow the path that we thought that was created with us or was given to us from the beginning. So committing suicide itself, it's a big mistake. Then following religion, again, it's a big mistake, because it's an ideological suicide. Then the best thing is to make our own path. So absolutely, Camus was brilliant when he made the third choice is the best one, of course.
Okay, so talking about, again, Albert Camus and Sartre, like last but never least, today we are, again, we're living in a subtle or world war. So it is like we have a world war, but because, of course, of the mad mutually assured destruction theory, like nobody would dare to make a full-scale world war. It's mostly like a proxy war.
Yeah.
And again, it's a very discreet or subtle world war, but everybody knows that it's not really a war between two countries in Eastern Europe, and there's a possibility of a war erupting at any time in the Far East. And we're watching a lot of civil strife in many, many parts of the world, and a lot of recession and depression, and which is sort of nostalgic, but in a very negative way, because it sort of reminds us again of the situation before World War I and II. Before World War II, for instance, there was major recession and depression. Like the only part of the world that did not suffer from it was the New World, North America,
yes,
to be more specific. And they had no interest at all in entering the war. Had the Japanese did not, bomb Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, the Americans would have never entered the war. So Americans and Canadians were just enjoying, like prosperity and just watching the war from far away in the old world. With all of this, again, World War III, if you wish, happening, how valid are Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus' ideas today? And how can we benefit from these ideas in today's world?
That's a very sensitive matter, of course, because yes, the world could be on the edge of a mass war again, a worldwide war again, and again, it is a proxy war, as you mentioned. So it seems that humanity did not learn from its mistakes, and they are not choosing the path. If we use Sartre's assumption that we have to we exist, we choose our path. Actually, it is not a choice of a path. It is actually defying the natural path here, because declaring war against any country and then supporting the other country and so on and so on and so on is actually, you are putting obstacles in front of the natural path of humanity. And this will take us again to the point we discussed earlier about capitalism. So when recession happens, that means business declines. So capitalist systems and organizations, they start to suffer. So it is known through history, even long time ago, that whenever there is economic depression or recession or one of these phenomena, the world tends to fight, or the people tend to fight, so they can make more gains, to get more supplies, to conquer lands and steal their product, their natural resources, to manufacture warfare equipment and technology that would help, and so on. Lots of areas will prosper, thus prospering other areas beside it. And then comes the destruction of one country and another, then we start rebuilding them again. So that's another investment, another money is pumped in the capitalist system, similar to what happened in Iraq. So they destroyed the country and then they rebuilt it again. And so many companies in the world just benefited billions of dollars because of that. If there was no war, they wouldn't have gained those billions. So they are defying the natural path, or the choice we make to make our own path, by creating obstacles in it by these wars.
And this is extremely ironic, because we tend to believe that we are living in the modern times and we're more civilized and thus more more civil and more free. But actually, in the past, when we were just hunters and gatherers, even before the farming and before anything, and we just, whenever I felt hungry, I went out in the wilderness, and then I would just pick some wild fruits or hunt. But today I don't have this option. We don't even have barter trade like we used to have in the past. So I give you fish, you give me chicken, no more. So I am in order to put food on the table, to feed my hungry children, I must go to work in and be part of this gear, actually. So, officially, there's no slavery, but in reality, there is a lot of it.
And by the way, this gear, which is forcing us to stay within it, to put food on the table, the same gear will take us to war as well. So when they feel that the gear is not running in the speed they want, then they will shift this gear to war and create again another wealth from the warfare.
Unfortunately, we always had warlords and big tycoons. They are the only ones who benefit from any war, because the layman, nobody benefits from war. If you're a winner or loser, everybody's a loser in war, really. Nobody gets to win at the end of a war, because what kind of victory will I celebrate if the war cost me one of my most dear individuals? So even if my country was victorious, but I personally lost one of my most dear individuals, or I lost an arm or a leg, or I lost a job, or I lost a house, what kind of victory?
Even more than this, even if a country won the war, then they have destroyed, to win this war, they destroyed another country completely, or countries. Absolutely. So after I win, where I should go if I want to visit a place or have a vacation, I destroyed these places already. So actually, as if we are shooting ourselves in the foot.
Absolutely. And this is why it might look really absurd. And we live in the illusion, and I feel that there is a great misconception that the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages are over. I personally, maybe I'm wrong, but I personally tend to believe no. We're still living in the Middle Ages, big time. In many, I don't want to say all the world, but at least in many parts of the world, we're still living in the Middle Ages.
It is sad. It is very sad. Yes.
Unfortunately. So there is this absurdism, really. And we hope that one day we can break this vicious circle, really. Ahmad, I really can't thank you enough. I really have to thank you very much for all of these very fruitful discussions we've had, and these very informative, discussions that I've had with you. So I believe our dear viewers enjoyed it again, and this gives us great incentive, really, and it's really an enticement for us to continue with deeper and with more freedom of thought for next season. So in the next season, we are just going to we're not discussing people, but we're discussing major ideas, and major ideas that can really shape our lives in this world. Matt, thank you very much again for being with us, and really looking forward to having you time and again in the program.
It was a real pleasure for me, Muhammad, during those couple of years that we have been with you, and I'm so delighted that we have made it successfully. But last thing, I don't want to give any bad hope for our viewers. When we talked about the work that happened with the rupture in time, I still believe that the goodness of mankind would drive this absurd ideas away, and we are looking for a better future, of course, and more brighter one. Thank you, Muhammad, and thank you all the viewers. And I wish you all the best health, wealth, and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. Thank you very much for being with us. And definitely, we wish that humanity would prevail at the end. And it's up to us, really, to define what humanity is, what we want. And again, a lot of people, religious people, would think that absurdism is anti-religious and whatnot. And I would just like to share with the dear viewers a personal view. Again, you might totally disagree with me, or you might see eye to eye with me. I always differentiate between the religious and the faithful. There's a very big difference between both. So some religious people tend to think in the most absurd way, because you believe in a God, and this God to be in all gods, actually, whether it's Abrahamic or non-Abrahamic religions, you believe in a God, and this God is omniscient, all-knowing, omnipresent, is present everywhere, and he is invincible, omnipotent, he has full control, and nobody can beat him. So this all-knowing God and all-present God knows that you and I and everybody else are different in everything, but he still gives us, like the same air, the same food and whatnot. And he is invincible, omnipotent, so he can, just like that, change anything if he wants. But he never did that. So apparently it is his divine will that we keep our differences. But at the same time that you believe in this God and you know that he has these attributes, you give yourself the right, and you are just one of his billions and billions of creations. You give yourself the right to correct his mistakes, to correct his wrongs, by reorienting people and channeling people on a specific path. So what can be more absurd than that, really? You worship a God, and you call this God to be omnipotent and so on, but you are acting as if this God is impotent, actually. Like, you're acting as if this God is a very weak God. So again, when we will leave the Middle Ages, this is the very important question. I think the Middle Ages will never leave us on their own. but we'll have to start with ourselves and live humanity per se. Never give ourselves credit for things that we never worked for. So you never chose your social class, you never chose, with all respect to most people, they did not choose their belief or their religion. They just inherited it, and then when they reach their 40s and whatnot, they start to assure themselves that yes, this is the right path. Again, you don't choose your race, you don't choose your color of skin, you don't choose your country, and you treat others with disdain. This is absolutely absurd, because you exalt yourself over others because of something you did not choose. And if this was divine will, then this God is extremely unjust. So why do you worship an unjust God? It's so absurd, again, really, if you think this way. And this God created the others, and whether you believe in science or religion, we come from one source. So whether we originated 2 million years ago, or actually now it's thought it's even more than 2 million years ago, in South Africa. So recently in South Africa, they found the missing link between the very high ape and the human, the Neanderthal or the Homo erectus. They found the missing link. They found the jaw of one of these people. Or if you believe in religion, according to Abrahamic religions, again, in the beginning was Adam and Eve, and which is, of course, less than 50,000 years even. So there's a huge difference here and there. But anyways, you and I come from the same source. So what is the big idea of you treating others with disdain? So racism, again, is absolutely absurd. So if there is absurdism in life, and indeed there is a huge amount of it, whether you're religious or non-religious, you're the ones creating it. And the reason I think faithful people are different, because faithful people are people who search for the truth faithfully, sincerely. And they don't just, take, ready-made molds and just inject them in their brains, and they just have these pigeonholes that you and I have to fit in, and you and I have to go through these molds, and if we don't fit them, then you're always marginalized. If you don't fit a specific stereotype, you're marginalized, and if you fit a stereotype, you're even persecuted. So it's absolute absurdism. We are creating that. Dear viewers, until we meet again, I really hope that the mind would prevail, because it is the greatest gift of all. Until we meet again, I hope you have a very pleasant time. Thanks for watching.